Everybody could come to order. Please take your seats. We're going to get started. So good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to your Innovation, Grants, Technology, Commerce, and Trade Committee. I'm joined, it's a mouthful, yes, I'm joined by my colleagues, Mr. Buscaino and Mr. Krikorian. We may be joined a little bit later by our other colleagues. I don't think we have a problem, but if we do, we have an overflow room in room 1020 if we need additional seating for folks who are waiting for their items to come up. And what I'd like to do, I know we have a number of public comment cards. We're going to hold those till the end. And what I'd like to do is take up items 3, 4, and 5 on consent. But before I do, we have a couple of public comment cards on those items. So I'm going to, not public comment cards, we have some comment cards on those particular items. So we'll start with item 3, and Ms. Ruth Sarnoff. And Ms. Sarnoff, you put in comments on items 1 through 5. If you like, you can cover all those items at once. Would you like to do that?
I don't know that I can do that, but
okay, then
I had different questions on each one.
Okay,
so.
then we'll just take one item. We'll do 1 minute on this item. You have a total of 5 minutes total,
yes.
As per our rules. So go ahead on this item for 1 minute on item number 3.
Okay. Thank you very much.
I'm sorry. I guess we need to read that into the record before you get started. I apologize. Procedural matter.
My minutes right now. Okay, getting back to 1. Thanks.
What's that?
Thanks.
Yeah.
My name is
Wait,
Ruth.
Just one moment. We have to read this. Would you please read it into the item into the record?
Item number 1 is
item number 3.
Oh, sorry. Item number 3 is a report from the Board of Harbor Commissioners relative to the Foreign Trade Zone Agreement with Prospect Enterprise, DBA Kansas Marine Company, for FTZ 202, Site 45.
Ms. Sarnoff.
Thank you. My name is Ruth Sarnoff. A number of issues came to my mind when I saw this. Number 1, what's the categorical exemption from what? And the harbors are major contributors of pollution, so I am concerned that I don't see anything about a CEQA report or any kind of environmental report. The harbor is getting bigger and experiencing different conditions than perhaps it was at the time that some of this started. I'm not familiar with exactly what the zoning is, but there are obviously numbers of sites, and I notice that it's within the sacrifice zones of the
Thank you very much.
southeast area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You just go ahead and stay there because you're the next speaker on the next item.
Oh,
so
okay.
without objection, item 3 will be taken approved on consent. We'll move to item 4. Please read that into the record.
Item number 4 is a Board of Harbor Commissioners report relative to the Second Amendment to the Foreign Trade Zone Agreement with 11850 Riverside LLC for Foreign Trade Zone 202, Site 20.
My name is Ruth Sarnoff, and I am concerned there is a fiscal impact statement that was submitted. There's no reference to what what was in that report. I do notice that in this agreement is with a limited liability corporation, and those have been used in very unfortunate ways, often in the banking industry and in foreclosures and in other other places in the public realm. And I would like some clarification on that. The harbor area has that's the beginning of the dirty air area there. That's one of the worst places in the country. I think it actually is the worst place in the country. And it takes in that whole southeast area, which basically has 6 refineries, and so the totality of what's going on in the region needs to be looked at.
Thank you very much. So without objection, no additional comments. That item will be approved on consent. Now we'll move to item number 5. Please read that into the record.
Item number 5 is a Board of Harbor Commissioners report relative to an agreement with Hecate Energy Harborside LLC to procure, install, maintain, and operate photovoltaic solar power systems at up to 12 site locations within the Port of Los Angeles.
Thank you. We have 3 cards on this item. Ms. Sarnoff, if you would start us off. Go ahead.
Ruth Sarnoff. I have some notes here. I don't know quite what I was looking at when I noted something to do with the codifying the city in relationship to this, and I don't know what that's about. There's an administrative exemption, and the Board of Harbor Commissioners do function almost like an independent autonomous group rather than a committee of the council, and so it always raises questions when I again see the limited liability corporations that are playing some role in this, and so again, the photovoltaic solar power systems are in 12 site locations within the Port of Los Angeles. I think you should have more information on this. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sarnoff. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Adam Lane, followed by Tommy Foray. Mr. Lane? Foray? You can both take a seat at the table.
Good afternoon, Chair and committee members. My name is Adam Lane. I'm here on behalf of the Los Angeles Business Council in support of this agreement between Hecate and the City of Los Angeles Harbor Department. The LABCs, as you know, have been a leading supporter of the FIT program since its inception, and we are excited to see the Port's participation in this program. This is crucial to help the Port comply with its Clean Air Action Plan and agreement with the State of California DOJ and AG. The project goes even further to support the Clean Air Action Plan's goals to expand the use of clean energy and infrastructure, helping improve air quality in these disadvantaged communities. As America's leading port in terms of container volume and cargo value, greening the port will ensure that LA will become a leader and example on the national and international stage for trade centers. Utilizing the Fit 50 program will not only improve sustainability and quality of life for port employees, but it will create local jobs and provide a financial return for the city over a period of 20 years. To date, the Feed and Tariff program has created more than 2,000 new jobs and more than 2.7 million tons of greenhouse gas emissions have been displaced. We commend Hecate and the Port for their leadership and commitment to reaching the city's ambitious climate goals. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Tommy Favai. I represent International Brotherhood of Electrical Workers, Local Union 11, and we wholeheartedly support Hecate Energy project, partnering up with the Harbor Department at the Port of Los Angeles. And we look forward to working together with Hecate Energy on these magnificent projects when it comes to solar systems and solar photovoltaic systems at the port. I understand there's 12 site locations throughout the terminals, and we look forward to put good electrical construction jobs to work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Without any other comments or questions, we'll approve this item on consent. So that brings us to 3, 4, and 5. And we'll move to number 1. Mr. Espinosa, would you please read item number 1 into the record?
Item number 1 is a motion from Council Members Blumenfield, Koretz, and Buscaino relative to a report on the delayed or incomplete compliance of 11 of the 52 mitigation measures contained in the 2008 China Shipping Environmental Impact Report.
Great, thank you. Now, this is a motion I submitted back in October after hearing the port issued a notice of preparation for a supplemental EIR for the China Shipping Terminal project. Although the port's been at the forefront of many environmentally progressive measures, I was disappointed to see that they had failed to meet their commitments on 11 mitigation measures related to air quality, noise, transportation from the original EIR. As I understand it, the supplemental EIR will attempt to address these mitigations which have not been fully implemented. We need to get this right this time for all Angelinos. The port has a tremendous positive impact to the region as an economic engine, but there are some trade-offs to that. Fortunately, new technology is being developed all of the time to address the air pollution, noise, general pollution, and traffic. So we're going to start off with public comment, but before we get into that, if either of my colleagues have any opening comments they want to make on this item, they're welcome to. Okay. And in addition to hearing from Mr. Sirocco, we've noticed NRDC folks who are going to speak. So we're going to do public comment, then we're going to bring NRDC up to the table as agendized, and then we're going to hear from the port, and then we're going to go into closed session. So we'll start with, we have a number of public comment cards. Nidia, and I apologize for mispronouncing, it's hard to read some of the letters here. Eric? From Ursik, okay. From the Coalition for Clean Air, followed by Andrea Herrico from UFC.
For them to get up.
What's that?
I was going to wait for them to get up here, take turns. Thank you, council members, for allowing us to speak today. One of the things I wanted to mention here is that we cannot get those years back that have been left unmitigated. And we're concerned that while data is available from regulatory agencies that known carcinogens and disease-causing pollutants are part of our operations and can be mitigated, that these are measures that were completely disregarded and China shipping had requirements actually waived. So we urge the committee to please assist the community in getting information that it needs to better understand how we've been affected these last years, and also to understand where the missing compliance reports are that are required, so we can work together at resolving this issue. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we'll hear from Andrea Herrico.
Right. Before I start, there are 5 copies if someone wants to pass those out. My name is Andrea Ricco, and I'm on the faculty at Keck School of Medicine. I'd like to raise 2 points today. One is that despite the waiver that we now know existed and was signed in 2009, officials from the Port of L.A., including Geraldine Natz and Chris Cannon, and including the mayor of Los Angeles, regularly made comments after 2009 implying or specifically stating that China shipping was meeting all of its mitigation measures. And the report that I'm passing out has some citations to some of those press releases from the port. So I think that it is not only hiding what happened, but actually putting out untruthful information. The other thing I think that's important to take out of this is, as others will say, what the health impacts might have been for the fact that the pollution wasn't reduced. And I would say that the emissions inventories need to be looked at very carefully, perhaps by a third-party person, and also the fact that the emissions inventories are nearly identical between the ports of LA and Long Beach. And I find it very hard to believe that with thousands of data points, you could have the Port of LA and the Port of Long Beach have 85% reduction of diesel.
Thank you.
Identical. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Charles Hart, followed by Peter Warren.
My name is Chuck Hart. I'm the current president of San Pedro Peninsula Homeowners United, also a member of the San Pedro Homeowners Coalition. We are the litigants, or 2 of the litigants, in a lawsuit against China shipping in the Port of Los Angeles. With a stroke of the pen, a political stroke of the pen, PCAC had outlived its need to oversee the port's impact on our communities, according to the port. There is no doubt in my mind that the PCAC EIR and air quality subcommittees would have discovered the China shipping failure to meet the EIR mitigation measures, and therefore it is reasonable to assume PCAC's demise was necessary to pull off this conspiracy. And that's exactly what it is. It's conspiracy, from the highest level of city government to the lowest. It cannot happen again. We have to reinstate some form of the PCAC. The port cannot be trusted to do what is necessary to prevent this from happening again.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Warren. Next is 1 minute per person. Mr. Peter Warren, and then Jesse Marquez, or Jess Marquez, can come take a seat because you're on deck.
I'm a 35-year resident of San Pedro as a member of the Coastal San Pedro Neighborhood Council for 14 years, chair of its port committee for 10. I won't go into how PCAC was dismantled, but locals used to joke that the port only listened to San Pedro and Wilmington residents if we sued them. Turns out port doesn't even abide by court-approved settlements and EIRs. This situation is so egregious that first, a supplemental EIR does not suffice. The port should be required to do a new full EIR for a variety of reasons I don't have time to go into. Second, a knowledgeable community committee with financial support to hire experts such as the EIR committee under PCAC must monitor future agreements at the very least. These meetings need to be Brown Acted, and the port should provide all necessary monitoring information as well as financial support, as with PCAC, to hire experts. Finally, the non-compliance and withholding of information and violation of the court-approved settlement is so egregious, I'm wrapping up, that I would third urge the plaintiffs to seek appointment of an overseer or receivership for the Port of Los Angeles with regard to compliance with all environmental laws and court-approved settlements. This should extend to the China shipping terminal, the TRAPAC terminal, and every terminal that is under operation with a lease that began after 2000.
Thank you. That was Mr. Warren. Ms. Jess Marquez, followed by Kathleen Woodfield. Kathleen, if you could take a seat on deck. Go ahead, Mr. Marquez.
My name is Jesse Marquez. I'm a lifetime Wilmington resident. I'm also the founder and executive director of the Coalition for a Safe Environment. My concern is that what you've requested has only been a report, but as elected city council officials, you are responsible for addressing the concerns, issues, and petitions of the public. And on October 19th, we submitted an extensive public comment document regarding the China shipping document, of which we pointed out there were illegal activities that were taking place and that we had other concerns and issues. And so we would like to see this committee also address our other concerns that should be part of this. Number one, the illegal port management and staff actions, the illegal violation of a court-stipulated order, failure to enforce a port lease agreement, failure to comply with mitigation measures, failure of the port staff to immediately disclose illegal activities, and the preparation of a subsequent EIR versus the port proposed supplemental EIR.
Thank you very much. Next, Kathleen.
Kathleen Woodfield. I'm the Vice President.
Followed by Jeanette Gunter, if Jeanette can take her seat.
Janet.
Janet. They didn't close the U or the A.
That's my horrible handwriting. I'll take responsibility for that.
Okay, Ms. Woodfield.
Kathleen Woodfield, Vice President of the San Pedro Peninsula Homeowners Coalition and one of the litigants of the China shipping case. I have way more than a minute of talking, but I will just keep talking until you cut me off. Did you read the article in the LA Times today by Tony Barboza? For me, it was a heartbreaking read to know that the port started undermining its own agreement to mitigate for the China shipping final EIR and the amended stipulated judgment by almost immediately giving China shipping formal waivers to its obligation to use shore power for its ships, and I imagine other mitigation requirements as well. It causes me to wonder, what was the intent of the port when it signed those legal documents? How is this possible? We know it's not legal. Is the Port of Los Angeles and its staff above the law? Are you outraged by this deceit, as we are? After all, the city of Los Angeles signed those documents too. The community has had a relationship of distrust with the Port of Los Angeles for a long time.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Next, Janet Gunter.
Yes.
Followed by Noel Weiss, if Mr. Weiss could take the seat on deck.
Janet Gunter. Over a decade ago, LA City Controller Laura Chick, following an audit of the Port of LA, stated that the port appeared to be operating more like the back room than the boardroom. 2 years later, after the port failed to implement directed policies resulting from that audit, she criticized the Port of LA Harbor Commission as having an open disdain for good government. At that time, Mayor Villaraigosa's appointed LA Harbor Commission president responded that Chick was unqualified and politically motivated. The City of Los Angeles has a huge conflict of interest here. What transpired is, in fact, criminal. It was the executive director of a public agency that willfully violated a court mandate. This is not the first time that the Port of LA has ignored laws, but it is, until this agency is properly reprimanded, the port will never feel the pressure to actually follow the laws set down for it. I wish to clearly state that the only way to attempt to find justice on this, what is a chronic problem, is to call for a criminal investigation by the federal government of this for this agency. If LA City Council members request this action, you'll go a long way in providing your genuine concern about such a flagrant disregard of the law.
Thank you.
Council members.
One second. Mr. Spindler, please do not disrupt this meeting at inappropriate times. Thank you. Mr. Weiss, followed by Taylor Thomas.
For the record, I think the public should be aware who's listening to this. Councilmember Bonin and Councilmember Martinez are absent. I think they needed to be here. I think going forward in your closed session, I think you need to ask the city attorney whether or not you need a firm commitment in the form of an IOU between the port and the city in writing that will hopefully obviate anything like this from ever happening again. There's maybe an issue whether or not one arm of the city can sue another, but certainly if you have a memorandum of understanding that clearly sets forth what is expected, that's a public document, then at least you control the public expectations in that manner. And I think put yourselves basically in a better position to meet your fiduciary responsibilities as trustees of the city. I think there should be an independent investigation. The controller may be one option, but I think hiring an independent investigator basically to look at this would also lend some credence and credibility to what clearly needs to be an investigation by the city. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, Taylor Thomas, followed by Ruth Sarnoff. Sarnoff, you take your seat.
Right here?
On deck. No, Taylor. No. Just telling the next person to get ready. So,
okay.
Please.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Taylor Thomas. I'm with East Yard Communities for Environmental Justice, and I'm also a resident of the Harbor area. And as a resident, I just want to come here and express my frustration by this news. As an environmental justice advocate, I trust that the regulations, laws, and procedures will be followed. And as a resident, I trust that my health and the health of my neighbors and community will be protected. And I expect that the elected officials and public agencies will do right by their constituents. So I'm asking you to work with the community and the port to create an independent oversight body so this does not happen again. It's time for accountability, and we need it now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Sarnoff, followed by Ms. Ramirez. Ramirez could take her seat at the table. Ms. Sarnoff, go ahead.
Ruth Sarnoff. I concur that we need a full EIR. The original EIR was done in 2008 or submitted in 2008. That's 8 years ago. Conditions change and the state of the world changes and the state of the city changes. What's really, really needed right now is a health study in the southeast area of Los Angeles that takes into consideration the harbor. There's 6 refineries there, coal refineries. There's the Alameda corridor there coming out with all the shipment out of there. That community has been being bombarded, and Exide has been there without being properly supervised for decades and decades and decades, all the way back to when its name was different and into the 30s. Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Ramirez will be followed by the letter H.
Thank you very much. We hope that this board and this body will be a little more stringent with several of these shipping containers and all these environmental agencies that are supposed to be watching these shipping cargoes that are coming in through the ports. As we already know, most of the Los Angeles ports are controlled by the cartels. Again, the Los Angeles ports are all controlled by the cartels and the Latino monopolies. We need to clean that up. And if we don't, we are in trouble. But other than that, the China shipping environmental, I don't think that the China shipping, they don't follow the laws stringently. And we need to crack down on several of the China shipping cargoes into this country and out of this country. We need to watch them a little more closely. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Mr. Herman, followed by Mr. Spindler.
Well,
Spindler, you could take your seat at the table.
the obvious problem is flagrant disregard, not caring to listen to your constituents. So they come in this afternoon before the end of the year, before 2016, to fucking criticize you, to your inability to hear them out clearly for one fucking minute. But in statement to the committee, it says here for recess to this closed session, you're referring to section 54.956, and I'm referring to 54.954.3.C's. To criticize a politician is not a violation of any First Amendment right, other than to say in a very peaceful state of mind, fuck you for fucking the community that you fucked up. Yes, I am, sir.
It's fucked up.
It's fucked up. That you don't take the flagrant disregard for the people in this community to hear them out for more than 1 minute. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Spindler is our final public comment.
Yeah, for people in China, I like to take opportunity to tell you, fuck you. You do not have to do 11 of 52 mitigation measure contain 2008. We people from China try to do environmental impact report, and you bend us over, fuck us. Now you have to go closed session because you do not talk to Chinese people correctly. Chinese people bring in lots of stuff.
Please talk to the item.
And we talk about China shipping environmental impact report. Now we talk about it, the 2008 Chinatown. 2008, now 7 years later, we try to ship toy to kids. Now, no shipping contract. Now, you need investigation by FBI. So China government want FBI to shut down City Hall and arrest Herb Watson Jr. as a war criminal against the Republic of China and let us ship in our goods.
Thank you. I want to apologize for all the folks who are here for, often we can't control when folks are being, racist and otherwise, but it's public comment on these items, but we are done with public comment. Now we're going to have Mr. Pettit and Mr. Morgan Wine from the Natural Resources Defense Council come forward as agendized.
Good afternoon. I'm David Pettit. I'm a lawyer with the Natural Resources Defense Council. Morgan Wyman, my colleague, is also a lawyer with NRDC. Thank you for asking us to speak today. I'd like to bring the discussion back to reality from where it's been. Just a moment about some legal stuff, and then I want to talk about where I think we ought to go from here. For people to deliberately violate CEQA, when you get together, when you conspire to violate state law, that's a crime. And when Ms. Gunter says that crimes have been committed, I think that's not a wild statement. I think that's likely to have happened here, and it's something that in closed session you all might want to think about. My view is that this problem, that is of blowing off CEQA mitigation measures, is a wider problem than just China shipping. We've asked the port to look at, for example, the TRAPAC terminal. TRAPAC is the terminal that came through the CEQA process after China shipping. There's a whole list of mitigation measures. My suspicion is that some have been ignored or not complied with. Mr. Soroka, and I have to say Mr. Soroka, I think, is doing exactly the right thing here. He didn't cause this problem. He's trying to figure out a way to fix it. And he's asked his staff to look at TRAPAC and report back on what happened. And I think we'll all have that information in January. There's also, as you may know, there was recently a port-wide EIR. The Port Master Plan was recently revised. There was an EIR for that. There are port-wide mitigation measures associated with that. And we're going to do a Public Records Act request on that and see if this problem is larger than just China shipping, possibly TRAPAC, and goes on to, to other parts of the port. I think that, thanks, Andrea, I think that one of the other speakers mentioned the solution I think we need to this is some kind of public oversight. I think that experience has now shown that the port, frankly, can't be trusted. to manage these mitigation measures that it has agreed to under CEQA, and that we need to go outside the port. And whether it's PCAC reconstituted or some other outside body, I think to restore the credibility to the court and avoid what may be a storm of litigation for the city and the port, there needs to be some kind of outside oversight and transparency where the port reports, quarterly or the like. Here are the mitigation measures that are in play. Here is where we are in complying with those. Nobody expects, 100% compliance all the time. But when you look at, for example, the LNG truck requirement that's in the China shipping EIR requirement, they should be at 70%. Now they're at 6%. So they're not even close on that. And that failure alone has put the port in a position where it's looking at maybe $250 million in liability to come up to snuff on those trucks. They're looking at another maybe $75 million of liability to come up to snuff on the yard equipment, making that as clean as they promised it to be in the China shipping EIR. That's a very big price tag, and one that could have been avoided now if they had done what they should have been doing starting in 2008. The excuse or the explanation you're going to hear is that, well, the emissions were lower than predicted, so we thought, no harm, no foul. The reason that they're lower than predicted is that the predictions went like this. They were hugely optimistic, and in fact, as you know, in 2008, the recession hit, and the cargo throughput went into the drain. In fact, as of right now, throughput has not returned to where it was in 2008 before the recession. So, the numbers are below what was predicted because what was predicted was wildly high. The flip side of that is that the emissions would have been even lower had the port done what they promised to do and what they were legally required to do in the 2008 EIR. And that's something also that's going to need to be made up, at least in my opinion. We're going to need to calculate what are those emissions, port-wide, not just China shipping. What are the excess emissions? Put a price on those, and then we're going to ask the port to pay for mitigation for those extra emissions. And based on what's happened before in China shipping and in TRAPAC and the community mitigation efforts, that could be another $50 or $100 million on top of the sums that I've already mentioned. And every dollar of this, as we look at it right now, could have been avoided if the port had just obeyed the law in the last administration. But they made a deliberate choice not to, and now those consequences have come home. And as I said, Mr. Soroka didn't cause this, Mayor Garcetti didn't cause this, but it's now their job to clean it up. And if you look at this on a port-wide basis, the remark I think that Mr. Warren made about receivership, that's not out of the question. If the port continues to show that it is incapable of managing CEQA projects and incapable of complying with legally binding promises it has made, maybe somebody else's hand is going to need to be on the tiller, so to speak. And if you think I'm making that up, I ask you in closed session, ask your counsel, is that a realistic possibility down the road here? As I see our job at this point, it's to work with the port and try to get all this fixed, and we are doing that. A point may come where we just go in such different directions that there's going to need to be litigation. As I sit here today, I'm hoping that that point will not come. We'll be able to fix this, get back on track for the mitigation measures, and make up for the errors that the port has made in the past. Thank you.
Thank you. Morgan?
No, I'm just here in support.
I wanted to ask you both here a couple of questions. Just to start, NRDC represented who in 2001, and are you continuing to represent the same folks, or who are you representing now?
We represented a number of entities in the China shipping litigation. We continue to represent them. Two homeowners groups, the Coalition for Clean Air. You heard Nidia testify earlier. She's from the Coalition for Clean Air. We continue to represent those groups.
In addition to NRDC's members that live in the area.
And how did NRDC become aware of the 11 mitigations that were not being fully complied with?
I got a phone call from Mayor Garcetti telling me that there was an issue with China shipping and asking us to work with the city and the port to try to fix it. That's the first I heard of it, and then I had heard, after that, I heard just, rumor on the street that there was going to be a new CEQA proceeding, and a new NOP was going to come out Mr. Soroka and his staff came to our office and explained to us what had happened, what the mitigation measures were that were in play, and how they intended to approach that. And that's how we learned about it.
And in terms of what you hope to see coming out of the supplemental EIR, what is it that you hope would come out of it?
It's an excellent question. What we are looking for is, let me back up a second. With mitigation measures, there are things, they need to be feasible. And what was feasible in 2008, I mean, we've gone past that now. And there are things that are doable and feasible now that weren't in 2008. So I'm hoping that the port is not just going to wrestle with, well, should we do LNG trucks or not? Should we deal with the yard equipment in this way or that way? But look at what is available right now and what will be available in the next couple of years in assessing how is the port going to deal with the emissions problems that exist. For example, there's now the ARB, Air Resources Board, has recently certified an ultra-low NOx LNG engine. And in about 2 years, that will be available for drayage truck uses. And my hope is that the port will say, we're going to do this. We're going to acquire these new engines, and this is how we're going to serve China shipping, just like we promised to do. If the port goes backwards and says, you know, LNG trucks are too expensive, we're not going there, we're just going to stick with good old diesel trucks, we're going to part company with the port on that, and that will probably result in litigation, because there are better options now than there were in 2008, and that's where we want the port to go.
To provide a few more specifics about, I think, what we're hoping to see, and from talking to port staff, it sounds like it is along the lines of what they're thinking. You may have heard, you know, there's shoreside power where the ship plugs in when it's at berth, so it's not just, you know, spewing out emissions when it's at the berth. There's also technology that captures the emissions if they can't plug in. That technology, there's 2 different providers of that, and it was recently certified by the California Air Resources Board. So we fully expect to see deployment of that technology, not a pilot study, not demonstration, but actual deployment of that really great life-saving technology. I think in addition to the trucks that David mentioned already, we really want to see in this project, it's a perfect opportunity to really make concrete steps forward about zero-emission trucks, how we're going to get them, when we're going to phase them in, how they're going to be incentivized, how they're going to be required. I think this is a perfect opportunity to start to weave that in, and we really expect to see that here.
Right. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you all see that there is a pathway that may be short of litigation, a collaborative pathway that you would be interested and willing to be part of.
Yes.
That would be different than the litigation.
Yes, that is correct. And for that very reason, I think that the process that the port has chosen, that is a supplemental CEQA process, is exactly the correct thing to do, because it's a wholly public process. There's no backroom deals or the like, you know, no phone calls, oh, we need to go easy on China shipping, this or that. Everything is done in public. There's an administrative record. Everybody gets to comment, and the decision, you know, is in writing and is public. And I'm glad that the port is doing it that way, and we intend to stay heavily involved.
Right. Colleagues? Ms. Martinez.
And I'm sorry, my morning was thrown off this morning by everything that's occurred, so I'm sorry for being late. I don't know if you've answered this already or not, but since the port is party to the lawsuit, and we had already entered into the approved lease agreement with China Shipping, what happens now? Do we reopen the lease agreement?
That's a very interesting question. The port, in fact, never got an amended lease with China Shipping that incorporated.
Never got an amended lease with China? Is that what you just said?
They got one that incorporated what was in the stipulated judgment in 2004, but in the 2008, when the EIR happened, and that's the list of measures we're talking about now, they never got China Shipping to agree to amend the lease to put those measures in it. And whether they can do that now or not, I don't know. I'm sure Mr. Soroka can respond to that. But the fact is, as we sit here this afternoon, those measures are not in the China Shipping lease.
And it seems to me that the main issue really comes down to the yard equipment and their emissions. So who owns these pieces of equipment? Is it China Shipping or is it the port?
It's actually the contractor that China Shipping has retained to run the terminal. So it's not the port. And I think, strictly speaking, it's not China Shipping. There's another company that's in there, but it's a private company. It's not the port. The truck issue is one that the port has taken responsibility for. So if we're talking $250 million for new LNG trucks, that money is likely to come out of the port's pocket. When it comes to the yard equipment, that may be out of China Shipping's pocket or its contractor.
And just to clarify a little bit, I think there's multiple sources of emissions that are really important here. Yard equipment is a huge one because the yard equipment stays in that spot, so it really impacts local community. But the ships and the trucks are also extremely important as well.
And let's say that none of these outstanding mitigations are ever implemented. What's the remedy?
The remedy is that we go to court and we ask a judge, tell them to implement it, give them a timeline, and assuming the judge does that, if the port disobeys the judge, then they're in contempt of court, and there could be either large fines or people could go to jail.
And would the port be forced to stop? Would then the port be forced to stop the China shipping operation? Would it be up to the port?
That would be up to the judge. One thing the judge could do would be to say, you stop this project until you come into compliance, or the judge could say, I'm just making this number up, every day you're not in compliance, you're going to pay $10,000 to the court, or then 10, then 20, or whatever. There's different levels they can do. But either way, it's the port is going to be hurting economically if they don't comply.
That's it for now. Thanks.
Any additional questions for NRDC? No. Mr. Buscaino.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thanks to a number of my residents who are here advocating, continue to advocate for cleaner air and holding the port accountable to impact our quality of life. And I know this China shipping mitigation has indeed has helped our quality of life in the San Pedro, Wilmington areas with a number of community projects that that they advocated for. So I just want to take a time to recognize those who are here. I just want to hear your point on your point of view on the 41 mitigation measures that have been met. Just want to get, I know we're focused on the 11th, and we should, and we will continue to. Give me your thoughts on the 41 pieces, the mitigation measures that have been met.
Well, with respect to those, they did what they're supposed to do, and that was a major effort on their part, and we recognize that. Unfortunately, the really big ticket items, didn't happen, and it wasn't, in my view, looking at the documents we've gotten from the port and having talked to former port staff personally, my take is that was a deliberate decision that was made in City Hall and communicated down to the port staff, which bears with it a whole lot of legal problems. So, yes, the port has done quite a bit, and it's true that emissions, particularly diesel emissions at the port, are much lower than they were when the Clean Air Project began in 2005 or so. And I think the port deserves credit for that, but they deserve, in my view, discredit for not having done the hardest things as well as the easier things.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Appreciate
you taking the time. Now we're going to bring up Mr. Soroka to make some comments in open session. And I know that this, because of the threat of litigation, most of your comments will be in closed session. But we wanted to give you a chance to say a few things in open session, maybe answer a question or two in open session, and then we'll move to closed session. Mr. Soroka.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have some prepared remarks for this afternoon. We are here to speak with you all today about an important issue facing the Port of Los Angeles. As you are aware, the issue involves China Shipping Container Terminal. Allow me to start with a few critical points. One important fact is that based on monitoring by the port, emissions at this terminal location have been at or below levels studied in the 2008 Environmental Impact Report. Secondly, we are faced with an unfortunate situation of delayed implementation of mitigation measures. This issue that was inherited by the current port management team, yet we are taking ownership. It must be addressed. The Board of Harbor Commissioners, along with the Mayor and I, are committed to fixing the issue. We are solutions-driven. And we are committed to ensuring that something like this never happens again. We are undertaking a new CEQA process, a supplemental environmental impact report to address the issues. The Port of Los Angeles is the leading seaport in North America in terms of shipping container volume and cargo value, generating more than 830,000 regional jobs and $35 billion in annual wage and tax revenues. In the past, the trucks, ships, and trains using the port have been major sources of air emissions, which have added to the smog and other poor air quality effects in the area. Looking to change this past pattern, the port has committed to developing innovative, strategic, and sustainable operations that benefit the economy as well as the quality of life for the region and nation it serves. To do this, the port has worked closely with the Port of Long Beach, agencies, citizens groups, environmental organizations, and other stakeholders in a multi-year, multi-project process to upgrade its facilities, enhance environmental protections, and invest in cleaner technology. This included the 2006 Clean Air Action Plan, also known as the CAP, a comprehensive strategy for reducing port-related air emissions. The port has also invested hundreds of millions of dollars on clean air initiatives in the past decade, including more than $100 million on the highly successful Clean Truck Program and more than $180 million in alternative marine power shoreside infrastructure. Already, as a result of these efforts, air quality at the port has significantly improved and continues to improve year after year. Again, is it against this backdrop that we will be undertaking with respect to China Shipping's terminal the new CEQA process? Under the China Shipping EIR, in 2008, the port certified an environmental impact report, or EIR, for the China Shipping terminal at berths 97 through 109. China Shipping has been operating out of the port since 1999 and one of the port's busiest, most crucial customers. China Shipping represents approximately 20% of the container volume for the Port of Los Angeles, providing high-quality and high-paying jobs in our community. In 2008, China Shipping's EIR was an ambitious, groundbreaking effort by the Port of Los Angeles. The EIR adopted 52 mitigation measures to reduce impacts in the areas of air quality, noise, and transportation. At the time of the 2008 EIR, many of these measures had never been attempted anywhere in the world. The port believed, at the time, that these measures, although far-reaching, were realistic and could be accomplished within a reasonable time frame. And many of the mitigation measures have been accomplished, as just pointed out. The port implements its mitigation measures by including them in its leases with its tenants. The port engaged in an extensive negotiation process with China Shipping to amend its existing lease for the terminal to include the new mitigation measures, but never ended into a permit incorporating the mitigation measures. Over the course of this lengthy negotiation process, it became apparent that there were technological, economic, and operational challenges that suggest some of the mitigation measures adopted are infeasible. Based on this information, the port is preparing a supplemental EIR that identifies and analyzes the potential environmental impacts of possible changes in the mitigation measures based on the feasibility of some of the mitigation measures, the availability of alternative technologies, and other factors to be considered. As described in the notice of preparation, these measures include the requirements for 100% of vessels to use alternative marine power, 100% compliance with the 40 nautical mile vessel speed reduction program, LPG-fueled tractors, LNG-powered drayage trucks, and emission standards for all yard equipment. It is important to note some of China Shipping's recent and current compliance. 98% in calendar year 2014 with respect to alternative marine power. 99% with respect to vessel speed reduction at 20 nautical miles, and 96% with respect to vessel speed reduction at 40 nautical miles. While this is ongoing, the port continues to monitor conditions at the terminal. Most of the mitigation measures have been completed or will be completed within the time period for implementation. Indeed, the port has invested more than $80 million in community mitigation measures at China Shipping's terminal to date. As indicated before, but noteworthy again, the port learned through its own analysis that emissions for the past few years at China Shipping's terminal have been at or below what was predicted in the 2008 EIR. This is due to the result of reduced levels of China Shipping's operations compared to what was predicted in the new EIR, and the port's efforts to reduce emissions port-wide. Since the port's adopted cap in 2006, great strides have been made in cutting harmful port-related emissions. Due to these successes, emissions levels associated with marine goods movement activities are often below levels predicted in past environmental documents. The port is committed to ensuring that feasible mitigation measures are adopted and implemented for China Shipping's terminal. A top priority of the port is achieving balance between the port's critical role in ensuring California's economic success and competitiveness in the global economy and its commitment to minimizing environmental impacts. Each project and terminal is a critical component in achieving this balance and efficient plus sustainable operation of regional goods movement chain. Unworkable and infeasible mitigation measures do not further this objective, and the port will work diligently to address all of these issues. Our next steps. The port is committed to being a strong environmental steward, as witnessed by our annual report card of emissions. And we would like to do this with the help of this committee, the stakeholders groups, and members of the public. One way to participate is to provide input as we go through the supplemental and public EIR process. The purpose of this supplemental EIR is to inform the Board of Harbor Commissioners with the critical information that needs to be considered any proposed changes to the China Shipping mitigation measures. The EIR is a planning document that describes the environmental impacts of a particular project. It is a problem-solving document. The EIR discloses the impacts such as traffic, air quality, noise, among others, and determines which ones are significant. The EIR also describes feasible mitigation measures to reduce impacts to an acceptable level. Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. We'll have a couple questions in open session, and then we'll move to closed session. I also want to acknowledge that we have two harbor commissioners here today, Ambassador Vilma Martinez and President Patricia Castellanos. So, what's that? Joe, go ahead and correct me.
The President of the Board of Harbor Commissioners, Ambassador Vilma Martinez, and of course our Commissioner Patricia Castellanos. Thank you both for being here.
All right. So I know it's difficult to answer questions in open session because of threat of litigation, so we're going to do most of this in closed session. But could you tell us a little bit about the mitigations that are going to be reevaluated in the supplemental EIR?
I think in the three categories that were mentioned, air quality, noise, and traffic mitigations, those will be the heart of what we study. In addition, as Mr. Pettit just mentioned, we are some 7 years away from the 2008 EIR study process. Technology and other advancements have been seen and witnessed. If there are areas by which we can move forward with some of those technologies, we're open to that dialogue as well.
Colleagues, do you have any questions for open session?
I do, if I can, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Soroka, for your presentation, and I'm happy to hear you and NRDC are working hand in hand, shoulder to shoulder, on trying to address these issues before us. As we heard from public comment on the communication with stakeholders, and PCAC was dissolved. I know you're meeting monthly with neighborhood council leaders. Going forward, how can we better communicate with stakeholders regarding compliance with the China Shipping Agreement and achieve greater transparency?
It's exactly part of what we've been doing, Council Member, as you have witnessed in CD 15. It's a subject matter of governance, compliance, a commitment to task, and an open data scenario that has been endorsed by the mayor since he took office. That outreach across a wide array of stakeholder groups that go past the 5 dimensions to which I report today are of core interest to me as we move forward.
Fantastic. Thank you.
And before we go into closed session, you've heard from NRDC and a number of the public comments. Is there any response that you can give to some of that in open session, and then we'll obviously hear more details in closed session?
All right.
I want to give you that chance to respond directly.
Thank you, Chair. We have discovered this issue, spent an inordinate amount of time researching it to make sure we had the facts. We disclosed this publicly, partnered with those who are necessary, such as Mr. Pettit and Ms. Wyan, And our commitment is the fact that we own it today, and we will move forward to developing solutions and fixing this issue to the point I made earlier to ensure it does not happen again.
Thank you for that. We have a number of other questions, but we want to move to closed session. Mr. Dennis, would you lead us through going into closed session?
The committee will recess into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 sub D1 to confer with legal counsel relative to the case entitled National Resources Defense Council et al. v. City of Los Angeles, Superior Court Case Number BS 070017. This case concerns operation of the China Shipping Terminal at the Port of Los Angeles.
So what that means is we're going to have to clear the room for folks who are not directly engaged in this issue or not part of the port. We're back in open session now, and on that item, we have decided without objection to continue the item, request the Harbor Department to report to the committee after the completion of the supplemental EIR. Seeing no objection, that'll be the order. And now we will move to item number 2. Mr. Espinosa, would you read that into the record, please?
And Councilmember, prior to doing that, would you like to reconsider the items now that Councilmember Martinez is here? Reconsider the last 3 items that we took prior?
Sure, but Corian is gone. Can we just add her on?
We're fine then.
Okay. So if you could read item number 2 into the record.
Item number 2 is the committee may recess into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9 D1 to confer with this legal counsel relative to a case entitled City of Ontario versus City of Los Angeles et al., Riverside County Superior Court Case Number RIC 1306498. And this case concerns the operation and ownership of the Los Angeles, Ontario International Airport.
Thank you very much, Mr. Espinosa. On this item, we have several cards, and I'd like to start with Cheryl Parisi of AFSCME, District Council 36.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm good. I'm Cheryl Parisi, Executive Director of AFSCME District Council 36, also Chair of the Coalition of LA City Unions. A number of weeks ago, representatives of the member unions of the Coalition of LA City Unions, representatives from the Los Angeles County Federation of Labor, as well as representatives from the Los Angeles Orange County Building Trades came here to express our concerns about the lack of consideration of the transfer of the Ontario Airport from the City of Los Angeles to Ontario. I am pleased to report, and most importantly, want to thank this committee, and specifically the chair of this committee, Chair Blumenfeld, for the strong concern and consideration that that this committee expressed for the workers and to ensure protections and a good, smooth transition for workers. And so we are now confident that those issues have been dealt with and express our unequivocal support for the transfer.
Thank you very much. Next, Steve Koffroth from AFSCME.
Good afternoon. Steve Koffroth. I'm the field director for Council 36. I want to echo the sentiments that Cheryl just expressed about the committee's efforts and the chair's efforts. Also wanted to make sure to express our gratitude to the City of Ontario and their staff for working with us to make sure that all of the concerns that the LA City Coalition had raised were addressed, and make sure that we have a great partnership moving forward as the airport transitions out to the City of Ontario. And we thank everyone for their great support and help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next, we have Mr. Herman. Mr. Herman, let the record show he's not here. Mr. Spindler. Mr. Spindler, let the record show he's not here. Ms. Ramirez. Ms. Ramirez, let the record show she's not here. And Ms. Sarnoff. Please come.
Ruth Sarnoff, my understanding is that the case concerns the operation and ownership of the LA Ontario International Airport. I'd like some clarification on that. I think the thing that strikes me right now is the whole picture of the whole bag of worms from the harbor to the use of the shipping and the huge storage facility there, which I spoke to, I think, when I came to this committee some time ago. It's equivalent to 900 football fields in size. It's the biggest in the world. At a time when shipping between the U.S. and China and other parts of the world is in a very nebulous situation.
Great.
If I could have 10 seconds more, I just want to
sorry,
raise two issues, if I can.
Finish your sentence, and that's it. I have to be fair to everybody.
All right. I think the conditions of life of the people of Ontario and Riverside County, with what's being brought into one of the dirty air areas, will be profound. And I think that I don't know why it's not part of the lawsuit of Ontario against the city of Los Angeles is not one of environmental effects.
Great, thank you. Okay, before we go into to closed session, I want to thank all those involved in what I think is really a good deal for Los Angeles, Ontario, and the JPA at the Ontario Airport. Our labor partners, we've heard from the mayor's office, the city attorney's office, LAWA management, all spent an enormous amount of time over the past 2 years, and especially over the past 2 months, putting together an agreement that I really think is good for everyone. But we're going to go into closed session to talk briefly about it, as it is a litigation item. So, Mr. Dundas, if you would bring us into closed session.
Sure. The committee will recess into closed session pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.9, subsection D1, to confer with legal counsel relative to the case entitled City of Ontario v. City of Los Angeles, Riverside County Superior Court, case number RIC 1306498. This case concerns the operation and ownership of the LA Ontario International Airport.
Okay, are we in open session?
Yes.
Okay.
We're back in.
Do we need to make any announcements? Yeah. Okay, now we're going to move to general public comment. We have Mr. Herman. Mr. Herman? Okay, Mr. Herman, let the record reflect he's not here. Mr. Modis? Mr. Modis? Let the record reflect he's not here. Rola Masri? Rola Masri? Record reflect Rola is not here. Mr. Hughes? Mr. Hughes? Hughes is not here. Gildo Oman? Gildo Oman is not here. Christopher Sutton? Come forward, please. Thank you. Mr. Sutton.
I know the meeting was take so long, but my name is Christopher Sutton. I represent the Westin Bonaventure Hotel, and on the issue of mitigation measures, MTA has told the Bonaventure that they're not going to be able to meet their mitigation measures for constructing this subway on Flower Street. They're going to actually close entrances to the Bonaventure. They're going to turn off the water supply to the Bonaventure at some point during the next year. And I came here hoping there'd be a full committee because 2 of the members are on the MTA board. We would urge the city staff in all the departments to enforce the rules that city has in place regarding MTA's projects.
You do realize that public comment here, just hold this time for a moment, is really about all items that come before the IGTCT committee.
Right.
The Metro does not come before the IGTCT.
Well, but there is an agreement between the city and MTA that is expiring.
I'll let you finish your time, but just so you know, that agreement never comes to this committee. Something like that would be appropriate in public comment in full council. It's really not appropriate in the IGTC committee because none of those issues affect our committee. But you have an additional 19 seconds. You may finish.
The Bonaventure is important for the operation of the convention center, and its inability to have its guests come and go and have emergency vehicles come and go is important to the operation of the convention center because the Bonaventure periodically, apparently in the next year, will be unable to operate because of MTA's decision to not comply with the mitigation measures identified in the original environmental impact report. And so in terms of that you have the convention center in your jurisdiction, is that the Bonaventure will be unable to meet its commitments because we don't know when and how MTA will block our entrances, cut off our water, have noise in excess of the loud, and I'm appearing in front of as many of the city bodies as I can. I was at the Fire Commission this morning. We believe that every committee needs to raise these issues because the master cooperation agreement expires between the city and MTA at the end of this month and is being renegotiated, and the council needs to be involved in that.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sutton. Next, we have Mr. Wayne Spindler. Let the record reflect, Mr. Spindler is not here. Ms. Ruth Sarnoff.
Ruth Sarnoff. I want to bring to whatever is left. I see only one council member here, but I'll talk to you, Mr. Blumenfield. The 90 projects that the city is fast-tracking through approvals on a one-by-one basis without too much consideration of the size of the projects as reflected in the city plan are scary, to say the least, and I have a lot to say about it. I'll have to confine it and find a better venue for raising some things. I'm not quite sure what that is, but 1 minute is not enough to address much of anything, to be honest with you, anything substantive, and I regret that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sarno. Ms. Sarno. Mr. Weiss, Noel Weiss, followed by Ms. Ramirez.
Again, Mr. Chairman, for the record, you're the only one that's present. I think all the council members should be present for the whole meeting, and to the extent you have anything that you can say or do to influence that, I would suggest it because I think it just shows disrespect and borderline contempt for the public. My public comment relates to the port operation, specifically the operation of the transport, and I gave you a copy of the port operating agreement. Right now, there's thousands of gallons of propane that are basically being transported out of the Plains Rancho facility through the port without any degree of accountability. Now, you just heard Mr. Soroka today say that the gap between promise and performance is going to be closed, and the port's oversight of its operations is basically going to be sustained and maintained. Well, that's not happening with regard to this agreement. That's why I gave each member of the committee a copy of the agreement, a copy of the risk management plan. That is being violated. The risk is incredible. There needs to be oversight. This committee has subpoena power. The subpoena power exists throughout. I think it's important that we begin to basically take a look at this risk and somewhere along the line basically get a greater degree of accountability there. So I appreciate your consideration, and hopefully you'll read the documentation that I gave you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Weiss. Ms. Ramirez.
Thank you very much. As we say goodbye to 2015, Let us never forget that without our beloved United States military aviators and pilots and law enforcement pilots, i.e. LAPD and sheriff's pilots, etc., and our Gillespie Daredevil pilots extraordinaire, there would never be any commerce and trade, much less our national democratic sovereignty. But our beloved United States military aviators, our pilots, are natural-born innovators, and they dominate the technology field, and they are the elite of the elite. Ain't no better. We are truly indebted to these wildcats for their zest, zeal, exuberance, and tenacity. I'd like to wish all of my beloved United States military supersonic studs and commercial airline pilots, law enforcement pilots, and Gillespie Daredevil pilots extraordinaire a blessed Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. May they and their families be blessed with riches, long life, wealth, health, and happiness, peace, love, and joy, robust happiness, and fortitude, and prudence, and all the beauty of life. God bless America, and Merry Christmas to all of you. May you be blessed as well. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Ms. Ramirez. Thank you. Mr. Espinosa, is there anything else pending before the committee?
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. This committee is officially adjourned.
Thank you.